Do I look familiar to you? You may think I'm a triglyceride, but if you look carefully, you will notice I only have two tails. I'm actually phospholipid. Now, if I'm phospholipid, then what's this? It has two tails too, but the difference is that it has a head. This is actually lecithin. So, welcome to Bio World, where I'm going to share with you the differences between phospholipid and lecithin. And yes, also steroids. Let's have a look at the syllabus first. In today's video, I will discuss phospholipids, lecithin being an example of the phospholipid, and steroids using cholesterol as an example. Let's begin with phospholipids. Synthesis of phospholipid is very similar to the synthesis of triglycerides. If you notice, it involves the condensation between glycerol and fatty acids. But for synthesis of phospholipid, it only involves two fatty acids. The other fatty acid is replaced with phosphoric acid. So we have the molecule of glycerol, which is a triose. Then we have two fatty acids. In this example, they are saturated fatty acids. They could be unsaturated too. And H3PO4, which is phosphoric acid. So you can see the squares in blue show us where condensation is to happen. Condensation will produce three molecules of water, and the oxygen atoms will form an ester bond with the carbons in glycerol to produce the two-tailed phospholipid. Let's move on to see the detailed structure of the complete phospholipid. We shall look at the molecular structure of a phospholipid. As students, you do not have to worry that you need to memorize this structure, but at least you must be able to recognize a phospholipid. The head of the phospholipid will contain the glycerol and phosphoric acid portion, whereas the tail will contain the fatty acids. Now, in this diagram, you can see the fatty acid has single bonds, meaning that this is a saturated fatty acid. Now, we've also mentioned that lipids are made up of the elements carbon, hydrogen, and a small number of oxygen. However, lipid has additional elements like phosphorus. So this is the case in phospholipid. Phospholipids not only have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, they also have phosphorus. And notice that the phosphorus is surrounded by oxygen atoms. So whenever oxygen is present, it will be attracted to water. So that is what makes phospholipids amphipathic. That is, the head will be hydrophilic, whereas the tails that only have carbon and hydrogen are hydrophobic. Now here's another phospholipid who seems to have broken his tail, but actually it's a representation of a phospholipid in which one of the fatty acid is unsaturated. We know that by the presence of the double bond that causes a kink to form. So this phospholipid will also continue to have the same structure, that is the hydrophilic head and the hydrophobic tail. Okay, now comes the turn of the phospholipids with the head. By now, you must understand that these linear tails are representing saturated fatty acids, and this bent tail is representing unsaturated fatty acids. Now, let's try to answer the mystery of this head. Lecithin is also produced by the condensation of glycerol and acids. But there is one extra component called choline. So the condensation now is between one molecule of choline, one molecule of phosphoric acid, one glycerol, and two fatty acids. So you see, lecithin has similarities to phospholipid in that there is two fatty acids, one glycerol and one phosphoric acid. But the difference is that head I keep telling you about, that is choline. Let's have a look at the molecular structure. Once again, students, don't panic. You do not need to know how to draw this structure, but make sure you are able to recognize it. If we look at it one by one, you'll notice that up to the oxygen here is actually part of the fatty acid chain. Then the part where you have the 3 carbons is the glycerol backbone. The phosphorus with the 4 oxygen atoms is the portion of the phosphoric acid, and the balance here is choline. So if we look up to the 3rd level here, then this whole thing is a phospholipid. But when you add choline, then it becomes lecithin. The structure of choline is actually a center nitrogen surrounded by 3 methyl and a hydrocarbon chain ending with hydroxyl. This hydroxyl end is the one that will condense with the phosphoric acid. So you will notice that earlier we know that the phosphoric acid is already very hydrophilic. Now the nitrogen is positively charged, making it even more hydrophilic. So lecithin is also an amphipathic molecule where the tails, the fatty acid tails, remain hydrophobic. However, the heads, this time made up of choline, phosphoric acid and glycerol, are hydrophilic. So now you should be able to recognize phospholipid and lecithin. Finally, it is the turn of the steroids. Steroids are basically made up of a 4-ring hydrocarbon structure. There is 3 hexose rings and 1 pentose ring. And steroids include many hormones like the testosterone, male hormone, estrogen and progesterone, female hormone, as well as cholesterol, which is part of our syllabus. Now, all steroids have this 4-ring hydrocarbon structure, but what differentiates between them are the side chains. So let's have a look at what these side chains are. You see, progesterone, testosterone, cholesterol, they all have the main structure of the 4-ring hydrocarbon. Their difference, of course, is that, like in progesterone, there is an oxygen on the first ring, just like testosterone, but cholesterol has a hydroxyl. In between the first ring and the second ring, all of them have methyl CH3. In between the 3rd ring and the 4th ring, all of them also have methyl. But The side chain on the pentagon ring is completely different. Where for progesterone, we have an aldehyde, testosterone, we have a hydroxyl, and cholesterol, we have a long hydrocarbon chain. So these are what we call as side chains, but you only need to focus on cholesterol. This is the detailed structure of a cholesterol molecule, and you are advised to be able to draw this structure. The cholesterol molecule follows the properties of all lipids in that it has the elements carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, where you can see it only has one oxygen atom. It is this one oxygen atom that makes the cholesterol have a tiny hydrophilic end, while the rest is made of hydrogen and carbon, making it hydrophobic. So with that, we have concluded our introduction to the three different kinds of lipids. Lipids actually are important in living things. So in my next video, you'll find out what their importance is all about. Until then, see you. Bye-bye.